Welcome to part 2 of this lesson about verbs in the simple past. This time we're going to look at regular verbs. And most verbs fit into this category. So this is the film that you should watch the most carefully, okay? This is the one that you should really focus on, because about 90% of the verbs, I think, fit into this category. The regular verbs, the plain old verbs, okay? Now, do you know what to focus on here? Two tiny letters, ed, because that's the ending of most of these verbs. Now you may recognize this. I talked, you talked, he, she, it talked, we talked, you talked, they talked. You see that I've added the ending ed on all the different forms. There's no s or anything like that, just ed on all of the forms. That's how you conjugate the verbs in the simple past, the regular verbs. Do you recognize this? Good. Now, let's look at the trickier part, and this is about the pronunciation, how you pronounce or say these words. There are 3 different ways to pronounce the ending ed. You do not need to understand all these details exactly, but if you know that there are 3 different ways, that's easier to remember that they are always spelt ed, no matter how they're pronounced. But we're still going to look at them, so maybe you'll get the hang of it. The first thing we're going to look at is whether the sound that the verb ends in is voiced or voiceless. In Swedish, we call this tonande or tonlöst. To check this, you put your fingers on the front of your throat. Are you with me now? Now put 2 fingers at the front of your throat, and if you feel in there, you will feel what on guys is called the Adam's apple. Girls have it too, it's just smaller. Just try to find it. Now, if you try to say, for example, s, an S sound, you do not feel anything, right? But if you try to say z from the letter Z, can you feel that it's starting to vibrate? That vibration is what we call voiced. Now, all the vowels go into this category, and lots of consonants as well. And if you know this, that after that sound, after this vibration, it's always pronounced like a D. Played, called, and so on. If you have that kind of sound that doesn't make your throat vibrate, as an s, k, t, p, then you pronounce it like a T. You talked, laughed, and so on. That's a very small distinction, and I'm quite certain that most of you will just make this distinction not knowing it, but still just be aware that there is a difference. There are some verbs ending in a D or a T, and then we add a tiny little I, a short I sort of. Started, ended. Do you hear it? I'm quite certain you said this already, but just be aware that it's actually there. So if you now know that you can pronounce this ending in 3 different ways, as in played, called, with a D sound, talked, laughed, with a T sound, and started, ended, with a id, then you know that no matter how you pronounce it, you still spell it ed. You see that all these forms still are spelled ed. That's the important lesson from this part. Now, let's look at some of them, the forms that are not spelled in the same way. There are a few different ways to spell it as well, just tiny things. The first one is about verbs already ending with an E, as in dance. You don't need to add an extra E, you just add the D. Dance turns into danced. No problem, right? Now then we have verbs ending with a consonant and the letter Y. That turns into I-E-D. I'm quite certain you've heard about different cases before where a Y turns into an I-E. So cry turns into cried. No problem, right? I'm quite certain you heard about it before. However, they're also the ones with a vowel and a Y. Vowels are the A, O, I, E. They can go on forever. They have the normal ED. Play is just played. Very few of you make this mistake of making more IEs than you should, so don't worry about that one. Just know that sometimes it's all right to keep the Y. And then we have a few short ones that double the consonant. Stop turns into stopped with two P's. Plan turns into planned with two N's, and so on. There are a few, and you will just learn them. You will notice them when you read, and you will just learn to write them as well. No problem with that one. Are you on track? Good. Now, it's time to practice. So head on to your assignments. Good luck.